Hello and welcome to Church at Home with Rachel for Feel Good Friday. It's good to see you all again. My first week back and busy as stink, getting ready, getting everything caught up after work. I did not check my emails for a full month while I was gone, nor my phone messages and texting and things like that. And it appears that I have a lot to get caught up on. So you can see I'm a horrible card shuffler. We're going to play some cards today. What do you think? Are you a card player? Euchre? Bridge? Gin? Rummy? Go fish? That's more my style. Uno? How do you pronounce that? Uno or Uno? When I was a kid, it was Uno, but who knows? Um, I'm not much of a card player. Like I said, go fish is sort of my big thing. Never learned hearts and things like that. War is a good one. Is a good game to play. Um, but I have here a pack of cards. And for any of you from the Diocese of Nova Scotia and PEI, you might recognize these cards. These were a brilliant idea that the Diocese of Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island, an Anglican diocese, the eastern part of Canada, um, picked up, borrowed with permission from the Diocese of Toronto, which is, of course, the center of the universe. The Diocese of Toronto is pretty much Toronto and surrounding area. But the idea was that it came out of of the work of people in both dioceses, starting with Toronto and then NSPEI, Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island, wanting to do something to help foster conversation about faith and getting to know people, because us Anglicans or Episcopalians are kind of known for not really talking about our faith. We're kind of shy that way, not introverted. I noticed one of the comments from yesterday's yesterday's video that Kim from Louisville mentioned that she's not shy, she's introverted. There's a difference. There's a big difference. But we sometimes, even the extroverts among us in the Anglican world, sometimes are a little bit shy. We're a little nervous about talking about things. So they came up with this idea of a pack of cards. And on these cards are icebreakers. So there are 52 different questions. I don't know if you can see them or not. 52 different questions or statements that people can choose from. So when you go to a meeting, or if you're in a Bible study or a new group or something, everybody gets to pick a card. And then you pick one out and you look and say, what does it say? So in this case, it would say, how would you describe your journey of faith? Oh my heavens. Okay. So, like that's a big question. And it's not necessarily a question that for somebody who's shy about their faith, if they're just a beginning really in a relationship with somebody in a group, that they might want to ask. So maybe we'll be kind. We'll pick another card. Let's see, which card should we pick? This one here. I'm picking from this side down, so I don't know what they say. This one says, describe an embarrassing moment in your life. Well, I've had lots of them on Church at Home, but this kind of question is great because this statement, because if you're in a group and it's a new group, maybe you've never met anyone before, nobody knows you. Nobody knows what your most embarrassing situation has been, an embarrassing moment in your life. So you don't have to choose the most embarrassing thing. You could just pick something embarrassing. Like, for instance, the day that I was a teenager and I went to the bathroom at school and did not realize that when I walked out of the bathroom, this is in the days before the square pieces of tissue paper for toilet paper. They had the big rolls. And what I didn't realize is I walked out of the school bath, the women's washroom, the girls' washroom, and there was a toilet paper stuck to the bottom of my shoe. And that roll of toilet paper was very strong because it didn't break for a long time. And nobody said anything to me about it. And I don't know how many steps I took before somebody or somehow I realized. And when you're a teenager and you're a high school girl and you're in a new school and you're trying to, be cool and make friends and influence people, toilet paper is not your friend. So, embarrassing moment. But that's not the most embarrassing thing in my life. There have been all kinds of more embarrassing times. Like, for instance, here's one. The time I decided to take after my first year of university, for which the university college I was going to, suggested that I might want to take a year off. In order to continue from first year to second year, you had to maintain at least a 60% average. Well, I did only 60. And the sister Dolores, who was the principal of my school, Brescia Brescia University College now, she suggested that I might want to take a year off or maybe never come back. So I did take a year off and I did want to come back. And when I came back with a new attitude and a new ability to focus and think. But I took a year off. And in that year, I took some courses. I took a palliative care course and I took some other stuff. And I took one on public speaking. What I didn't know was it was a Toastmasters course being offered through the college, Fanshawe College in London. And when we got there, everybody knew, it seemed, except for me, that the whole point of this was that we were going to start speaking extemporaneously, like off the top of our heads, right away. So at the very first meeting, the very first evening of the course, to which I paid probably a good penny in that day and age, that was 26 or 28 or 30 years ago, 32 years ago. Oh my gosh, it was 32 years ago. We went in and they handed us cards like this. Everybody had to pick a card. We weren't allowed to look at the card. We weren't allowed to turn it over until they called our name. So when they called our name, we could look at the card and we had 15 seconds to look at the card. And then we had to talk about what was written on that card. And this card I'm going to put down because it's like useless. It's a hard question. So I'm going to pick another card. Oh, okay, here's one. So we had to pick a card and we had to talk about, for 1 full minute, talk about what was written on that card. So that card, the word written was sauce. SAUCE, that's it, sauce. Now, in retrospect, I could have talked about, ketchup is a sauce, and ketchup goes on hamburgers and hot dogs. And hamburgers and hot dogs come from cows, hopefully. We don't necessarily know about the hot dogs. But, and cows are important because my uncle's a farmer. He's a cattle farmer. I didn't have to stick to the word sauce. I could have used the word sauce to launch into whatever it is I felt called to speak about. I managed to talk about sauce for a grand 6 seconds. And then I froze. And I never went back to that course again. Talk about an embarrassing moment. However, it was important because it taught me something about myself. I was convinced I was never going to be a public speaker. It was not in me. I could not do it. And guess what? I'm a priest. And I speak publicly on a regular basis. And now I speak extemporaneously, like this, off the top of my head, every day, except Saturdays. So this time, the question is, share a time in your life when loving a neighbor as yourself was especially challenging. For those of you who aren't Christian, something to know about is that one of the things that Jesus tells us is that we are to love our neighbor as ourselves. We are to love the Lord our God with all our heart, with all our mind, with all our soul, with all our strength. And we are to love our neighbor as ourselves. So it's the great commandments, the 2 great commandments, to take all the 10 commandments and sort of mash them all into 2 easy to remember things. To love our neighbor as we love ourselves. And this one says, so that's an important commandment. Jesus is expecting us to love our neighbors as ourselves. And my question here is, share a time in your life when loving a neighbor as yourself was especially challenging. Well, there's quite a few of those actually. But one of them, let's see if we'll pick one here. One of them, I think, was a time when I was a kid and I was probably 8 or 9 years old, 9 or 10 years old. We're living in Listowel, Ontario. And she wasn't so much a next door neighbor. She was a child in the neighborhood. And when no one else was around, I was her best friend. When other people were around, she wouldn't play with me. She just ignored me. And I found that really difficult because there came a time when her name was Lena, and Lena fell out of favor with a bunch of kids at school, and people in the neighborhood wouldn't play with her. And by then, I got to know a few people, and it was really, I had a few of my own friends, and I had people to play with. But Lena fell out of favor and then sort of wanted me to hang around with her. And I found that to be especially challenging because when times were good, Lena didn't want to hang out with me. But when times were bad, Lena wanted to hang out with me. And then I started realizing that I knew how it felt to be the outsider. And I knew what it was like to recognize that sometimes we're not considered cool. And so loving Lena as myself meant that I had to reach out to her and include her in what we're doing. And lo and behold, Lena became part of a group of friends that we both had in common, and we all stayed friends the whole time I lived in Listowel. And so it was tough for me to love my neighbor as myself. But it actually, that challenge became one of the best gifts I had. When we are faced with things like having to speak extemporaneously because someone expects us to, because we put ourselves in that situation, or when we have to love someone as ourselves, we can think of it as opportunities to try a new thing, like playing with this deck of cards. Every day we are faced with the opportunity to pick up a deck of cards. Those cards might be playing cards. They could be answering the phone when it rings or checking our email. It could be um, going to a pub and hanging out with new people. It could be going to try a new hobby. Who knows what it might be? It might simply be going for a walk around the block and making the intentional decision to smile and say hello to our neighbors. But every day we have the opportunity to pick our own adventure, to pick which card we're going to play today. How has your faith changed since you were a child? Describe one of the best decisions you made in your life. What cards has God dealt you today? Which ones are easier to deal with? And do you realize it's okay to say, no, God, I don't want to deal with that card today. I think I'm going to set it aside, like these ones I've set aside. I won't throw them out. I'll come back to them later when I'm ready. But right now, I'm going to pick a new card. Tell about one of the best gifts you have ever received. You, this crowd of people that gathers day by day with me. You are one of the best gifts I have received. You make me feel good on Fridays and every other day of the week. Every day we have the opportunity to wake up and pick what card we are going to choose. How are we going to face the day? What challenges are we going to accept? Which challenges are we going to say, not yet? Which some of them might be easy, some of them might be hard, some of them might be silly, some of them might be serious. But we have those decisions, and it's okay for us to make them. God is not demanding that we pick up all 52 cards and answer every question right away. God just asks that we try. And maybe think about it and think, what do you think about God and healing? Well, that's a pretty big question. Maybe I'll answer that one tomorrow. Name a person who has significantly changed your life and how. Well, that one's easier. There's too many to name for today. But as you go about your weekend and as you prepare yourself for the 52 cards you'll pick up today, think about what you're willing to try. Think about what you're not willing to try and be okay with that. I hope that you will try Gospel on the Go with Rachael on Sunday. The Sunday church service part that I do is now over on the other channel, and you should be able to access it by clicking on your screen, the link on your screen. And if not, let me know and we'll figure out how to get you there. But that's where you'll be able to find the Gospel on the Go with Rachael, is where you can find the Sunday option that's a little bit different than Church at Home. But I'll be back here on Monday to talk about who knows what. Maybe another one of these cards. Maybe one a little bit more difficult. Maybe I'll gather up the courage to try something harder. Probably not. Have a great weekend. God bless you, and I will see you again on Sunday or on Monday.